Welcome to another episode of The Ranya Show. I'm your host, Ranya, and today's episode is going to be about grieving the what ifs and the what is. And it's so important to distinguish between the two because they sound similar, but there are different layers to them. So, the what if is the should have, could have, would have, but never did. And the what is the current circumstances, the current events, the current memories that we play over and over again in our minds. And this episode is to shed light on the differences between them, the similarities, and to talk about ways that we can sit with them, we can acknowledge them, and how to move forward. So, the what ifs, as an example, um, what if I would have said things otherwise? What if I didn't go? What if I stayed? What if I left? And we sit there with the notion of the what if, and then we start to create scenarios with them. If I would have said no, then that person would have been upset with me. If I would have said no, then maybe I would have protected my peace of mind. And we sit there and we overanalyze and overthink the what ifs and we grieve them because we've come up with so many different scenarios and so many different outcomes. But those outcomes don't necessarily exist. It's the choice that we made, the decision that we made, which then becomes what is. And even if we go back and we're like, oh, it is what it is, I wish things would have been different, it's still what is. But it doesn't mean that it's permanent, it's temporary. Everything is just temporary. And, I'm sure you've heard the phrase, and if you haven't, this too shall pass. And it literally is. And I'm a big believer in that this too shall pass. But it also comes with putting action behind it. And if you don't like what is, and instead of just focusing on the what ifs, because then you're creating all of these scenarios of what could have been or what should have been, then what you can do is choose a what if and go with it, you know? So if you don't like the outcome of what is, what if you made a different choice? What if you decided a different route? What if you spoke up? But having the idea of what if is not the same as creating change. It's not the same as creating a different outcome because you can have all the what ifs, but at the end of the day, it's still what is. And one of the things that I've learned after differentiating between the what if and what is to sit with it. Sit with my current what is. What am I currently holding back on? Where have I currently given parts of myself away? Where have I let other people overstep boundaries and not said anything because I was too afraid of hurting their feelings or creating conflict from simply saying no, I don't subscribe to that, or no, I don't believe in that, and no, this does not sit right with me, and it's making me uncomfortable, or I don't appreciate the way I'm being spoken to. And in the moment, we tend to go into fight or flight because we don't want it to turn into a conflict. Because we don't know what the outcome might be. If you're standing up to somebody who's a bully, you don't know how that bully is going to react. or if you start to say something, but then you stop yourself because you're afraid of the outcome, or as sometimes it's labeled as the consequences. But then, after it's already happened, you sit there and you overanalyze, you overthink, and you're like, what if I would have just stood up to that bully and said, I don't appreciate the way I'm being spoken to, and I don't like the way you're confronting me right now, and you're causing a scene, or whatever it is. But instead, it's like, if I have the chance to do it again, I will. Or, it's not worth it for me to say something because nothing's going to change. No, nothing is going to change unless you start to make change. And it starts within. And even if it turns out to be exactly what you feared, at least you don't go home and think about all the things you should have done and all of the what ifs had you spoken up. But you can say, I did all that I can do, the best that I can do. And even though the outcome is not what I had hoped for and wanted, I know that I did everything in my power to protect myself and to not feel like I gave parts of myself away to meet somebody else's needs. But I met my own needs. And even though it didn't go as planned, I still met my needs. And now I'm not going to sit with this and have it affect me. And I'm not going to react to it because it's just a projection of who they are, you know? So it's all about acknowledging things. It's about realizing things and sitting with those things and having our own needs met before we can meet somebody else's needs. Because at the end of the day, we're all human. We all want our needs met, but not at the expense of sacrificing our own needs for somebody else's. And then you have, you go into the what is, which can be any number of things, whether it's a toxic work environment, a toxic family environment, job you hate, uh, the bank account that you're scared to open. That's your current circumstance. But when you start to shift things and you start to meet your own needs, the outer world starts to shift too. And I can tell you that from my own experience of going from why is this happening to me to now why is this happening for me? What lesson am I here to learn? What new outcomes am I here to create? And it all begins from within. Don't get me wrong, there are a lot of things that are out of our control. And there are still things that I still feel like are out of my control, but I no longer react to them or make it mean something about me. But I take action steps, and the things that I used to overthink and overwhelm myself about, the what ifs, I don't get to that as much anymore because I say those things, I do the things that scare me. I share my feelings, my emotions, and sometimes it hasn't ended so well in the sense of like where I became the villain and the villains played the victim. But at the end of the day, I could be like, well, I did the best that I could. I did everything in my power. And even though it did not go my way and I didn't get the justice or the things that I was hoping for, I still know that I did the best that I could in this situation to change it so that I had a win. And even though it doesn't feel like a win, there is still a lot that I learned from this experience and from this event that now I can take with me so that if, God forbid, I come across it again, which 9 out of 10 times we do, until we learn the lesson and until we adapt in a sense of like not reacting from a place of resentment or anger, but a place of like, oh, this has nothing to do with me. This is just a projection of who they are. And I can't change them, but I can change how I react to them. And then by doing that, it no longer stings. And there will be times where like your feelings will still get hurt or it'll still make you feel sad or you still might try to find um like closure as to why they did what they did, why they said to what they said. And that'll come up and it will sting a bit, but it won't be a wound anymore. It won't be a gashing wound that you're trying to bandage up and it's still leaking. It'll be like, oh, ow, okay. Well, that's healing a lot faster than it did a month ago. And it starts to shift and things start to change. And then it's just like you build this armor of meeting your needs. And the more you meet your needs, the less anybody else's needs have an effect on you. And that's what I want everyone to get to that end result. Because at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with you. It's just a projection of who they are. It's a projection of their own inner child trauma, their own generational trauma. And sometimes it's hard to see it that way in the moment just because of the level of pettiness that they go to or the level of sabotage they try to go to. But they're sitting there obsessing over you and what you're doing, and you've blocked all access to you. That's an amazing feeling because when you block access from people, they no longer have access to you. And it, yeah, it's an amazing feeling. So, to harp more on like the what if and the what is and grieving, it's not necessarily to say like get over it or stop grieving or, no, grieve, sit with it, see what comes out of it. Because at the other side of it, you'll realize that it's not as hurtful as you made it out to be because it's has nothing to do with you. And I've heard this before of like other people's opinions of me are none of my business because the only opinion that should matter is your own. And if you can sit in front of the mirror every single day and know that you did your best, you met your own needs, you didn't harm anybody, you didn't harm yourself, and that's all that matters. But at the same time, it's not to say, oh, like, oh, they're just traumatized. They're probably going through something and they're taking it out on me. It's nothing personal because at the end of the day, it's nothing personal, but it also doesn't make it okay for them to take it out on you, obviously. And sometimes it's like such a thin blur of a line of like, okay, but they're still attacking me in a sense of like verbally or micromanaging or um, being mean to me. They're still going to continue doing that. And you're not the only one they're doing that to. So it really is nothing personal. But at the same time, you also need to meet your needs by stating that they've crossed the boundary and not allowing it to affect you and not taking parts of yourself away to meet anybody else's needs. So there's been instances where I've come across people and I do this thing because I feel like it's so enamored in me that I'll start to like psychologically analyze people through observations. And I think it is a trauma response just from like the way I grew up and always feeling the need to be in control of everything around me. Because if I'm in control and I know it's coming, then I can shift it, I can change it. I can't. It's still going to happen. And again, the only person I can shift, the only person I can change is me. And I grew up believing that no, it's if I'm in control and I know it's coming, and if I stop talking to this person before they have the chance to do that to me, then they can't hurt me. And it can be very lonely to be in that place of like where you alienate everyone else because of that fear of what if they alienate me? What if they don't talk to me anymore? What if they want nothing to do with me anymore? So let me beat them to the punch. So paying attention and like observing people and psychologically analyzing them is definitely, I feel, is a trauma response. But at the same time, it no longer feels that way because now I use it to help people versus using it as like a tool to shield myself so that no one has access to me. But not in the sense of like no one has access to me because I'm protecting myself, but it was more like no one has access to me because then they have no chance of hurting me. So that's like the difference in that as well. Um, Isolating and alienating yourself from other people does not serve you, does not serve them. And predicting that they're going to do something before they have the chance to, that's just right off the bat. It's like you should have never been friends with them, or because you're already setting yourself up to believe that there's somebody that cannot be trusted, that there's somebody who's going to hurt you, somebody's going to try to do something to hurt you. And you've already soured the friendship before it's even begun. And then there's the other side of it, which I've done too, is seeing the red flags, but giving them the benefit of the doubt over and over and over again. Because I saw potential in people of the version of themselves that they could be, even though they themselves were not willing to be that version. So I would always say, like, oh, they probably didn't mean it. And, they're just having a bad day, or they're going through their own personal stuff. And I would go out of my way to meet their needs. So they felt better about what was going on with them. But then when it came to my needs and needing a shoulder to cry on or like a lending me an ear, it was like, no, you really should try being positive and this negative energy is just throwing me off. Let's just talk about something else. Let's focus on something else. And then I would just be like, oh my God, am I such a negative person that maybe I shouldn't mention things anymore? And maybe I shouldn't say things anymore. And I should just keep it happy go lucky and like keep things to myself. And by doing that, I was suppressing those emotions. I was suppressing who I am. I was suppressing what I was going through. I was suppressing the value of my experiences. And then that grew into resentment. That grew into alienating people because they couldn't meet my needs. But at the same time, I wasn't allowing myself to meet my own needs because I was too busy meeting other people's needs. And in turn, it became resentment, anger, grief over investing so much time and so much energy into a relationship that in the end fizzled out because I got frustrated of always meeting them where they are and not having that being reciprocated. And then I would just be like, so it was like I would go from 100 to 0 real quick. 100 giving my all, being there for them, supporting them, always showing up for them, all of it. And then when it was time, like, to be my cheerleader or support me or be there for me, they were usually nowhere to be found. So then I was like, why am I even bothering anymore? And I was just like, distance myself to the point of like, we just don't really talk anymore. And that's also not the healthiest way to go about it, but more of expressing how you're feeling. And if that person listens to you and actually takes into consideration what you're saying and becomes mindful of how they're acting around you, how they're being around you, then you can make it work, and you move forward. But if you do mention how you're feeling, and then that person's like, I don't know what you're talking about, and I've been nothing but a great friend to you, and it's just like, turning it back on you, then you know that that's not a relationship you want to be a part of. But it also shouldn't get to that point. That's something that should be established from the get go. And I feel like that tends to happen a lot in relationship. It's that fear of hurting people's feelings or the fear of speaking up or the fear of setting boundaries that we tend to sacrifice and say things like, oh, they'll change with time. Oh, this is just temporary. They're usually not like this. Oh, oh. And then years pass and you're just like, what the hell is wrong with this person? Why are they being like this? But they were like that all along. But you just thought if you poured all that love and all that support and all of you into them, then they would change. But it's really you that's changing, where you're just getting fed up. And then now you're resentful towards them and you have all these expectations of them. And now you're asking too much of them because of the expectations you have for them. And then in the end, it's like, but I've been like this all along and you had no problem with it. Why do you have a problem with it now? So, yeah, that's to differentiate between grieving the what if and the what is, and placing boundaries. Boundaries is the biggest thing that you can do to be able to break away from the grief in a sense and grieve it. Just sit in your grief, feel those emotions. Um, Look at your part in it, what you're accountable for. And from my own experience, the accountability for me was not speaking up sooner, not saying anything, being afraid to hurt their feelings, so I would hurt my own feelings instead. And that was my accountability. And now I lead with that, where if something bothers me or somebody said something that upset me, I say it. I don't yell. I don't, start an argument. It's just like, I would really appreciate it if you didn't use that tone of voice with me. Or I'd really appreciate it if you didn't make comments about me in this, you know, in this way. And people have been so receptive to that in my life where I've had these conversations. And back then, it used to be like, oh my God, you're being so sensitive and don't be so dramatic. And repetition. I just kept, you're crossing my boundaries, you're crossing my boundaries, you're crossing my boundaries. And controlling the way I react to when they cross my boundaries. And it's really shifted things for me to now where I could be like, I really did not appreciate what you said. And it was probably unintentional, but please be mindful of it if it happens again. And 9 out of 10, super receptive and super mindful and respectful of my boundaries. And it goes both ways. I have people that sometimes if I do things unintentionally or I don't notice that I did it, I'll have someone be like, hey, Ranya, we were having that conversation and you said that kind of made me feel a little. And then I'm like, well, thank you for bringing it to my attention because honestly, I did not even realize I had said that. It wasn't my intention for it to come out in that way. But thank you so much for bringing it to my attention. And I will be more mindful of it for the next time that we have a conversation about something that might feel that way, you know? So it's all about intentional action and just being intentional with the things you say, intentional with your thoughts, intentional with your beliefs. And then you'll just see a complete shift and just keep placing those boundaries and sit with your feelings. Don't suppress them because believe me, they will fight back stronger and stronger the longer you suppress them. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for tuning in. It was a pleasure, as always. And I will see you next time on The Ranya Show. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. Bye.